I'm on a recording roll today. So, have video 6 of The Point. Written and read by me, Gerard Brennan. This is 3 short chapters, so just try to keep up, as they say. Brotherly love. Paul, no longer wearing his mask, waited for Brian on the footpath outside number 45. Brian stepped out and tugged off his balaclava. His face rippled with a snarl. He stalked towards Paul. "Not here, bro. We'll take it back to the flat." "The hell was that, Paul?" "Just come on." At the flat, Paul backed into the living room with his hands raised. Brian shoved him and he fell into the armchair. "What the fuck was that for?" Paul asked. "You know what it was for." "Ack, fuck off. Maybe if she thought the IRA was really watching her, she'd make the effort to do a dish or two. You saw the state of that place." "You're out of order." "Look, Brian, you can't worry about something like that if we're going to do this. You're not so naive to think that getting robbed wasn't going to upset her, are you?" "But at least she wouldn't have been worrying about her life being under threat." "Oh really? Wake up, Brian. 90% of these students move out after being robbed to safer, cleaner houses because they fear a return visit. We probably did her a favour." 90%? Did I ever tell you that 57% of all statistics are made up on the spot? A joke? Good for you. Paul looked his brother up and down. "Listen, whether you believe it or not, if we rob that place again in a few weeks, there'll be a different name on the milk in the fridge." "I just think you went too far with the IRA thing, okay?" "Well, I'm sorry, but I was trying to save you from another kick in the swingers. I'd have thought you'd be grateful." "She missed my balls." "Ah, well, you didn't give her much of a target." Brian made a "you're so funny" face. Look, Brian, I'm trying to help you here. Earn you a bit of money. You know I'm looking out for you, don't you? You're my wee bro, the most important person in my life." Brian stood still, looked down at his big brother. Paul waited patiently. He was used to his brother's thoughtful gaps, knew there was no rush in him when he took a moment of quiet. "Ack, for God's sake," Brian said. "Are we going to crack open this cider or what?" All apologies. Brian sort of coasted along as Paul dragged him through a cluster of burglaries over 5 nights. The other jobs passed without any real incident, and they ended up with a neat bundle of cash and some phones and laptops. Paul's fences would have been... And they ended up with a neat bundle of cash and some phones and laptops Paul's fence would have been able to give them a few quid for. He should have been happy, but the girl from the first job niggled at him. Poor Mary. She'd been frightened half to death by Paul's act, and Brian couldn't get her face out of his mind. He had to do something for her, but the best he could come up with seemed so fucking stupid. Still, it was better than nothing. He slid a little white envelope through the letterbox in the door of 45 Cairo Street and beat a hasty retreat. As he bustled down Botanic Avenue, he tried to imagine Mary's reaction to what he'd just posted. Mary picks up the postcard from the doormat. The picture on the front is a red-faced cartoon with the word "sorry" emblazoned across the top. Mary flips the card over. It says, "There was a mix-up. You've nothing to fear from the IRA. The Army Council sends its apologies." Mary looks confused, but maybe, just maybe, a little relieved as well. The Union. Paul and Brian sat at a table under a poster advertising £1 a pint night. A half-full pint stood in front of each of them. Paul thought about how well a couple of half-price tequilas would go down. He tried to wait patiently while Brian studied a list written on a spiral-bound notebook. His attempt was short-lived. "Those fake student cards were a real money saver. One of your sharper moments, eh, kid?" Brian glanced up at him, a slight scowl giving away his irritation at being distracted. Ah, yeah, he glanced down at his list again. Can you get the loan of a van? I've too much stuff to carry onto a bus to Warren Point. You won't need that much. The house we're renting is furnished. We need a van. If we can't borrow one, they're not that expensive to hire. That's a waste of money. I don't ask for much, Paul, but I don't want to lug my stuff about on public transport. So think. Brian took a huge slug from his beer. Paul smiled as a little firework went off in his brain. Actually, Paul said, I do know a man with a van, and he owes me a favour. Great. We'll leave as soon as you can get it then, okay? Aye. That'd probably be for the best. A final fuck you. Paul wore a hood and baseball cap. It was a slight deviation from his usual dapper high street attire, but it was a necessary and functional one. He'd been spying on Mad Mickey as the hippie gangster conducted some business on the street. And since the hoodie and baseball cap were staples of the Lower Falls dress code, a slight drop in his standards made it easier for him to blend into the background. Dave, the suited caveman, leant against the front of Mad Mickey's van and sucked on a cigarette. The faint rumble of the diesel engine told Paul the keys were in the ignition. Very sloppy, Dave. Paul used stealth and blind spots to negotiate his way to the van. He curled his fingers under the door handle and took a heartbeat to compose himself. If he couldn't do this in one fluid motion. If he couldn't do this in one fluid motion, he was fucked. You're slick, kid. Just go for it. Paul jerked open the van door and hopped in. Dave barely had time to register the shift in suspension. Paul cranked it into reverse, and Dave toppled as the support was whipped away. Mad Mickey stood, mouth agape, as Paul flew past and gave him the finger.